those who are preparing for DevOps interviews, batch 6 is finally starting on 30th of July. Do not miss it. As of now, we are having just few seats left. Okay. So if you go now, you can get you can enroll yourself. As of now, we are having this discount. You can use the coupon code batch 6 and this course will come to 7559. Okay. Talking about this course, first of all, everything we are going to study from scratch, DevSecOps and Cloud DevOps. And also the best part about this course is two things. First of all, I'm going to help you one-to-one dedicatedly to prepare your resume, like what kind of projects are good to add, how to explain projects and everything, what kind of task even to write in your resume. I'm going to help you along with the projects. Okay. Talking about the projects that we are going to implement within this course, 10 hands-on project will be there. Let me explain. Like CRUD-based Java full stack application, Node.js full stack application, portfolio website, virtual browser, multi-tier application. 3 multi-tier application we are going to have. One connecting to a database like PostgreSQL, one connecting to MongoDB, one connecting to MySQL database. Okay. Then we are going to have a microservice based application, and we are going to have then real world Java application and .NET based application as well as Python based application. So all these applications we are going to implement hands-on. This will give you a really good learning opportunity, as well as if you are implementing these many kinds of applications, different kind of application, it will help you understand real time how things happen. Okay. So this course is a kind of ultimate course. It has everything, and also you have a dedicated support from me. You will learn only real time how things happen in companies, and that will make sure you are completely ready for interviews. Okay. So if interested, make sure to check it out. Links will be in the description and enroll, because from 30th it will be starting, and as of now we have just few seats left. Okay. So the first thing that we need to have is set up infra. Okay. When we talk about infra, it means all the things, all the tools and technologies that is needed for performing the whole DevOps process. Okay. First, what we need to have? First, we need to have an EKS cluster or any other deployment cluster. Okay. After that, we need to have Jenkins or any other CI/CD tool which you want to, from where we are going to perform CI/CD. Then we need to have SonarQube server. Then we need to have Nexus, and Docker and other tools will be installed on the machine itself. Okay. So for EKS, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use Terraform scripts to set up a completely proper EKS cluster. Okay. And the best thing about this Terraform script is that it's completely variable format. That means there is nothing hard coded in this. That means this Terraform script can be used by anyone. You just need to replace the private key name and then it will work fine. Okay. And other these tools, I'm going to manually set them up on a virtual machine. Okay. Real time, the thing is in companies we are not using these tools on virtual machine. We basically, what we do, we set them up on Kubernetes cluster or EKS cluster. Okay. These tools, at least that's what we used to do in my previous company. Okay. So now let me start by setting up all the tools needed for this whole CI/CD process, and then we can proceed with creating the CI/CD pipeline. And CI/CD pipeline also, what I'm going to show you, it's writing the CI/CD pipelines from scratch, so that later on also, if you are doing it by yourself, you'll be easily able to write those scripts. Okay. Okay. So first of all, what I'm going to do, So first of all, what we need to do in order to run Terraform commands, we need to have a virtual machine, because there exactly we are going to run the commands. Okay, you can run it on the local also, but I prefer to do it on a separate machine. And I'm going to create one machine. I'm going to call this machine as server. I'm taking Ubuntu machine LTS version, which is one of the latest and having the long-term support as well. Talking about instance type, so I'll go with T2 large for this one. Key pair. So key pair is the way to connect to the virtual machine that you are going to create. In case you are doing this for the first time, you can click on create new key pair, provide a name, make sure it's RSA and make sure it's PEM, and you can click on create key pair, and this will download the PEM file on your local. Since I have already done that, so I just need to select the key that is present on my local. Talking about the security group, so let me show you the ports that I have actually opened on my machine. If in security group, I have opened in inbound rules. These are the ports that I have opened. You can maybe take a screenshot and you can utilize them as well. After that, T2 large, and yeah, so I have selected the security group. Then for storage, so generally what I suggest, two things you remember, team, whenever you are performing CI/CD or any practice thing, make sure that you are taking minimum T2 medium machine, and storage should be minimum 20 GB minimum, because if you go it below, even if your machine starts, it will hang a lot because it does not have enough resources to work well. Okay, so make sure you take minimum 20 GB of storage. Click on launch instance. So this instance is created and it takes few seconds or few minutes to completely come up it in running state. So meanwhile, we can open it, get the public IP address, and I suggest to always use a tool like 𝗘𝗂𝗃𝗃. Reason that I say so, because it's, first of all, it's free and it's very user friendly as compared to putty. In companies usually we see putty, but this tool is the best at this point. So you can download it and you can open it. Now, in order to connect from our 𝗘𝗂𝗃𝗃 to the virtual machine that we have created, we need to create a session. So for that, click on session, and we connect to our virtual machine using SSH. Okay, at least to Linux based machines. So we'll click on SSH. Here we need to provide the public IP address. After that, the username. So I have created Ubuntu machine. That means it will be having default username of Ubuntu. If you are creating like EC2 machine, EC2 Linux machine, then by default it will be having EC2 user. So similar to that, other machines have different usernames. So for Ubuntu, it's Ubuntu. And here we need to define, like basically provide the information where exactly is our private key, which will be used for authentication. So using that private key, we can access our virtual machine. So I'll click on this and I'll browse to the location where we have the private key. So this is the private key that I have. Click on OK, open, and click on OK. And here I'll just rename it just for the ease of it. I'll rename it to server, and I'll just give it a color as well, like this one. Okay, and let us connect to it again. So I'll just close here and then double click on this. Okay, now you can see that we are connected to the virtual machine. Okay, just to confirm, here you can see the private IP address 1133. Same you can see here also. Okay, this is the private IP address. Now here we need to install different tools which which we are going to use. Okay, you remember one thing, that whenever you create virtual machine, first command that is always supposed to run is sudo apt update. What it does, it's going to update all the packages available in the Linux repository by default, so that those packages are available for usage. Okay, like for example, if I want to install kubectl or any other tool like Terraform directly from this virtual machine itself, then those packages should be available and ready for usage. So for that, we have to run the first command sudo apt update in these machines. Okay, now first of all, what we need to do, so from this machine, we need to make sure that we are connected to our AWS account so that we can create resources on that machine, on that account. Okay, so for that, we need to make sure that we have one tool installed, which is AWS CLI. AWS CLI is command line interface tool, which is going to help us communicate with our AWS account. Okay, that means we need to install first, and for that I have written the script. I'll share this script with you as well later on. And once we install it, later on, we need to authenticate with our AWS account. So how we can do that? So for that, you need to create a credential. This is my AWS account. Okay. So two options you can do. First one is you can either create a specific user, which will be having permission to create resources on this account. You can go to users, create a user, then assign some roles and policies to that user. And later on, you can use that user for creation of resources. For demo purpose, what I can suggest, you can go to your user ID, go to security credentials, and here we have this option access keys. You can click on create access key and it will create the access key. Okay, and since the access key will be visible for just once, so you have one option. For example, if I go here, if I click on create, it's going to create the access key, and you'll be having one option to download the that file, Excel file as well. So once you have downloaded that Excel file, then you can get the details of two things. One is the access key ID, and second one is secret access key, which we need to use. Okay, if I go here, so AWS CLI is installed on our machine. Okay, now we need to provide credentials so that this machine can authenticate and connect to our AWS account. So first command, AWS configure. Once I run this, you can see it is asking for access key ID. After provide the access key ID, which is going to be this one. So once I provide the access key ID, it's going to ask for secret access key, okay, which is downloaded. And after that, it's going to ask for basically the region. So since I am in Mumbai location, which is in India, so I'm going to provide the region, this one. If I show you here, this one, ap-south-1. Okay, these three things we need to provide. Okay, so let me just stop sharing screen for a few seconds so that I can put the credentials. Those are my actual root credentials. Okay, so give me 1 second. Let me put it. And okay, okay, so I have put, and here you can see I have put all the details. Okay, and once you have put, you can just simply click enter, and now we are configured, we are connected to our AWS account. Okay, so next up, what we need to do, since we are connected to our AWS account and we have AWS CLI also installed, next up what we need to do, we need to set up Terraform files so that we can create our EKS cluster using Terraform. Okay, so for that, first of all, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a separate directory named EKS. Can someone just confirm my screen is visible in chat? Okay, great. So now I'm going to create a directory. Inside this directory, I'm going to put my Terraform files. So I'll go inside this directory. Okay. Talking about the Terraform files, so 3 files, specific files that we need to have. Actually, I'm teaching one mega project in batch 6, which has every single tool in DevOps integrated everything together. Okay. So I have, these are the few files for it. So for Terraform, 3 files we are going to have. First one is main.tf, which has complete definition of what we are going to create. And the thing is about this Terraform file that I have created, it has everything in variable format. That means key, you just need to change the name of private key, and then you will be creating the whole cluster. Like whole infrastructure is getting created, security group, VPC, subnet ID, internet gateway, and everything, load balancer, and everything else as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this, which is main.tf file, create here as vi main.tf. And do not worry when we write the CI/CD pipeline. So I'll be explaining properly so that you know the way that I write pipeline, it becomes very much easier, so that you don't need to worry about anything else. And second file we need to create, which is output.tf. Now output.tf we are creating because what I want, that once the resources are created which I want, so all the information I should be getting on screen, like cluster ID, node group ID, VPC ID, subnet ID, these things we should be able to see when the resources are created. This is also created. And last thing that we need to create is variables. In variables, the only thing that I have defined is the key that we are using. If I go here, and here if you see that I'm using key which is DevOps. Okay, DevOps.pem file I'm having, and yeah, this is the key which I'll be using for authentication. So now we have ran these commands. Now we need to make sure that we have Terraform installed on our machine. So for that, I can run the command to check if Terraform is present or not. Terraform, and as we can see, Terraform is not present, but using Snap Package Manager, we can install Terraform. Now it gives the command to install Terraform, but the thing is, if I run this command, it's going to give error. Let me show you. And you can see it gives error, and that means in order to fix it, we need to add classic. Okay, so I'll just add classic in it. Basically, you know, whenever you install packages using Snap, most of the tools that you are going to install, they need in those cases, we need to add classic at the end of the command. Once I do, then Terraform will be installed in few minutes. Not few minutes, few seconds. Okay. Another way of creating EKS cluster is that you can use EKS-CTL. That is also, I think I have shown on YouTube also in few videos. Using that also you can create EKS cluster. But when we talk about IAC to be used, then in that case, using Terraform, this is what we can do. Okay. Now, after Terraform is installed, first thing that we need to do is Terraform init. What it's going to do, it's going to initialize the folder and download whatever plugins or whatever things are needed for Terraform to execute those commands. Okay. After this is run, next command that we are going to run is Terraform plan, just to see how many resources are going to be created and what resources, different resources are going to be created. Here you can see it's going to create 17 resources. As I say that this Terraform script that I'm having, it's setting up complete infrastructure. Okay, So it's going to create so many things. It's going to create roles, and roles. It's going to create virtual machines cluster, node group, security group, so many other things it's going to create. Okay, now so I can see that, okay, these are the things that are going to be created. Next thing that we can go ahead and we can start run the command to start the creation of these things. So for that we can run the command as apply. But the thing is ki when we are running this command through some CI/CD pipelines, if I'm running Terraform apply from a CI/CD pipeline, what 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 is going to be the problem? Let me show you. If I click enter, it's going to give a prompt asking me to write yes in order to proceed. You can see here, do you want to perform these actions? That means I need to write here yes, right? So if I'm running this command in Terraform, sorry, in Jenkins or any other CI/CD pipeline, manually at runtime we won't be able to give this, right? So in that case, what we can do, we can run the command like, we can give the like permission before itself, right? --hyphen auto dash approve. If I run this command terraform apply --hyphen auto dash approve, automatically it will be having permission to execute and execute these commands and create the cluster. Okay, and let us see. And you can see it has started creation of whatever resources is needed. It's going to create. Okay, and this will take like 10 to 15 minutes. So meanwhile this is being done, we can start with the creation of other tools. Okay, so now what we need, I need to create 3 virtual machines, one for Jenkins, one for SonarQube, and one for Nexus. So I'm creating these 3 machines manually, even though we can use Terraform also for the same, but again different script I have to use. Okay, here 1 second, I'll just give a name as, let's say, sorry, Ubuntu machine I am taking a version 24.04. Actually previous I was using 20.04 like that, but since 24 is one of the latest, so I'm going with that so that we can stay updated with the latest version of tools. And here I'm going to go with, so yeah, in this case basically what you need to understand that on Jenkins you need to run all the pipelines. Okay, separately I'm not creating slave. That means I'm going to run all the commands and all the pipelines on the master itself. That means if we need to run proper pipelines, we need to make sure that Jenkins has more resources. So what I'm going to do for Jenkins, I'm going to create a bigger machine, that is T2 large. Okay, for the other Nexus and SonarQube, we can create small machines. Okay, and Jenkins storage I'm going to go with 25. Let me name itself right now. Okay, so Jenkins is also created. Meanwhile, let us launch the other 2 instances, and other 2 instances can be a small size, because for SonarQube and Nexus we don't need to give too much storage and too much memory. Okay, but still in Nexus case, one thing you need to remember, that Nexus requires minimum 4 GB of storage available, because if storage of like 4 GB is not available, Nexus will go down or like it won't work. Okay, so in that case what I'm going to do, I'm going with T2 medium for SonarQube and Nexus, and storage both of them I'm giving 20. Okay, let us create it. Now these machines are also created, so let me rename this. This tool I'm going to provide as SonarQube, and this tool will be Nexus. Okay, now here also you can see like this is already going on, so we'll just leave it. Meanwhile, let us configure these tools, Jenkins, SonarQube, and Nexus. Let us get started with Jenkins. Now in Jenkins, what you need to understand, basically the prerequisite for setting up Jenkins is that on whichever machine you are setting up, be it like a Kubernetes pod or Docker container or a Linux machine, you need to make sure that or that machine is having JDK installed. Then only Jenkins will work. Jenkins, that is the prerequisite for it. Okay, so I'm going to create another SSH session, provide IP address, public IP address, username is Ubuntu, then advanced SSH. Here we need to select the, 1 second, I think. Okay, so yeah, so, okay. is it? Sorry. So here, let me provide it again. And Ubuntu advanced search, select the private key using which we can access Jenkins server. Okay, let us rename this to Jenkins. Let us give it a tab color also. I'll just go with red. Let me close this. And yeah. Now, again, in case of even Jenkins or any other server, as I said before also, that first command you are supposed to run is sudo apt update. That is the first command that we should always run, so that if we need to install any default packages from Linux repository, they should be available. Okay, so make sure to always run the first command as sudo apt update. Once that is done, as I said, the prerequisite for Jenkins is that we should be having a Java or JDK installed. So I'll type here Java, and we can see that Java is not present, but it gives us the command to install Java. I can run this. This is going to install JDK 17. Okay, and you know what does it mean by headless? Headless means that this version of JDK is not having any UI. Okay, click enter and it's going to install this. Once this is done, then we can run the commands to install Jenkins. Now, where do we get commands? So you know, most of the commands that I recommend to get, instead of like asking others people, you can just go on Google, search on their official page. For example, if I search here as Jenkins install, the first page that comes, you can click on that, and here on the left side you can see installing Jenkins. We have multiple options depending on what kind of machine you are using. You can select them here, like Mac OS, Kubernetes, Linux, Docker, Windows. I'll go with Linux. Inside Linux we have multiple flavors, so depending on the flavor that you are having of Linux, you can choose. Here I'm going to go with Ubuntu. Okay, now here you can see we are going to install long-term support version. Okay, you know, there is one like latest version, there is LTS version. In companies, when it comes to set up Jenkins or any other tool, we prefer to use the LTS version because it is kind of stable. If you go with latest, it is possible that in latest version you might get some bugs or so. So if it comes to like installing, even if you're going for interviews, if they ask like which version of this tool you are using, so you know, sometimes it's not possible always to remember the version, right? So in that case, best option is that you should say we were using LTS version. Okay, because LTS you don't need to define the specific version. Also, one more thing here, you can see OpenJDK is no longer included. Make sure that you are going with OpenJDK 17, which is supported everywhere. Okay, now I'll copy all this command and get back on Jenkins here. Now there are all these commands, right? So either we can execute them one by one, or what we can do, I can create a script. Let's say gen.sh. Paste the commands here, save this, and now instead of executing commands one by one, we can execute the whole script. Okay, if I show you ls, you can see script is there, but the problem is that this script is not executable. Sorry about that. You can see read, write, and read. That means this script is not executable. We need to make it executable. So first we'll run the command sudo chmod +x, means adding the execution permission for Ubuntu user. Okay, and this script name, which is gen.sh. Once I run this command, and if I run ls, you can see now the color has been changed. This means that this the permission has been given to execute. Also from here also you can check permission is added, right, for execution. Now we can run the command as in this format. Sorry, in this way we are basically executing the script, and click enter. Now it's going to install JDK. It's going to install Jenkins on our virtual machine. Okay, along with Jenkins, one more thing that we need to install. Let me explain you. Yeah, so basically, you know, as I said, Docker we are going to install on this machine as well. So one thing that you need to understand, when you install Docker on any virtual machine, by default only root user has the permission to execute Docker commands. But if you want that other users can also be able to execute Docker commands, you can do two things. Either you can run this command, which is going to give permission to different users, like all the users, or what you can do, you can do this. sudo usermod -a capital G docker and $user. In this command, what I'm doing basically, when you install any tool like Docker, so after installation of Docker, it's going to create its own group also, which is Docker group. So if I want that Ubuntu user should also be having permission to execute Docker commands, we need to add Ubuntu user to Docker group, so that whatever permission is given to Docker group, that should be assigned to Ubuntu user as well. Okay. After so that assigning of like group to a user, we can do the using this command. Okay. This is like just for single user. You can define the user here. I am writing $user. That means whatever the current user is. Okay. Or you can run this command. Both of them will work fine. But in this case, you need to run one more command, which is new group docker. That means immediately the default group for Ubuntu user will become this one, primary group basically. Okay. Yeah. So for now, I'll be going with this command. So once we have installed, Jenkins is installed, right? So in order to install Docker, I'll just run the command as Docker. And it's going to give us the command to install Docker. So I'll copy this, put a -y so that no prompt comes for asking me permission. Click enter. Okay, and here I'll copy this command as well. Let's wait for this to complete. And I'll run this command. Okay, as soon as I run this command, just to check if we have permission now, I can run the command docker full hello-world. And you can see that now we are able to pull Docker images. That means it is working fine. Now Jenkins is installed, but we need to configure it for usage. So what I'm going to do, first of all, we need to get the public IP address. And one other thing that you need to remember, that Jenkins by default runs on port 8080. That means if I put here the IP address :8080, Jenkins should be accessible to us. Okay. So for getting started with Jenkins, first of all, you need to provide the initial admin password, which you'll be able to find it inside the VM where you have copied it. Okay. So if I run cat command and it is inside var folder, so it is possible that we might be getting error of permission denied. Why? Because var folder requires elevated permission. In that case, what we can do, we can give it elevated permission like this. Okay. So this is the password that we receive. And this is the initial admin password, so which we have to put here. Copy that, sorry, continue. And now it's going to ask us like how you want to set up Jenkins. So we have two options. Either we can select the plugins to install by ourselves, or we can ask Jenkins to go ahead and install the suggested plugins. Always choose the first one, because Jenkins knows better which plugin should be like mandatory for it. So we'll click on this. Now it's going to take some time to install all the whatever like plugins are required. Okay, depending on network speed, depending on what size of the VM you have taken, it might take some time. So yeah, let's wait for this to complete. Meanwhile, we can go ahead and we can configure the other tools. In other tools, what we are having, SonarQube we are having, and Nexus we are having. Okay, so let us configure SonarQube. Before that, if I go here, you can see the cluster has been created, EKS cluster, right? Name, you can see cluster ID. This is also the name of the cluster, node group ID and subnet ID and VPC. Okay. Now, if I run 𝗘𝘅𝗃𝗃 command, basically what I want to check if I am able to work with it or not. So if I run here as 𝗘𝘅𝗃𝗃, first of all, we'll see that 𝗘𝘅𝗃𝗃 is not found. That means we need to install 𝗘𝘅𝗃𝗃, right? So we can again run the command using snap. And as I told in the beginning, when you install a tool using snap, you need to make sure that you are putting classic after it, and then it will install snap 𝗘𝘅𝗃𝗃. Another thing that you need to understand, that in case of Kubernetes cluster or EKS cluster or any kind of Kubernetes cluster, the way that we authenticate with it is by using kubeconfig file. Kubeconfig file is a specific configuration file that contains detailed information about the cluster along with some certificates as well. And that file can be used for authentication. So for example, let's say I want to run the command as kubectl get nodes. I want to see how many worker nodes are created. Okay, so it's going to give error, key connection refused. That means because we do not have the kubeconfig file. If you see this error, make sure that first of all you need to check if we have kubeconfig file or not. In case of EKS, if you want to like get the kubeconfig file, so what we can do, we have another command Where is it? This one. So it's a AWS CLI command. What it does, it's going to update our kube config file. Basically, create if you're running for the first time, it's going to set up this kube config file, which is going to be used for authentication. Okay, how in what way you need to run the command AWS EKS. Then region you need to specify. My region is AP-South. Then you have to define that we want to update our kube config and the cluster name. Now you might be thinking, okay, by running this command, simple command, how we are able to get the kube config? Because I'm running AWS CLI command, right? And we have already authenticated to our AWS account. That means this command, if you're running here, that means this command is also getting executed on our account. Okay. So if I run this, kube config file is created on this location. You can see home ubuntu dot kube, then config. And now if I run this command kubectl get nodes, you can see now we are able to get the worker node. That means now we are connected. Okay. So this is done. Now we are connected to our EKS cluster also, and Jenkins is also set up. Next step, let us set up SonarQube. So again, I'll get the public IP address of SonarQube, and let us create a duplicate of session because they are all having the same uh, uh, username and machine username and the private key. Okay, so I'll click on rename. First of all, let us rename this to SonarQube and change the public IP address. Okay, color also if you want you can change, up to you, and click OK. We can double click. Now we are connected to our SonarQube server also. Okay. Now one very important thing that you should know. First of all, let me explain you why do we have SonarQube. Okay. Give me 1 second. Let me connect this. Once I set up tool, then you can ask questions. I'll just, where is it? Okay. Now in SonarQube, two things are very important which you need to understand. On YouTube or everywhere, everyone is saying, okay, SonarQube is a code quality check tool, but how exactly does it work? You need to understand that very clearly. So let us say SonarQube, we are having SonarQube. What it does code quality check. Code quality check is what? Basically finding out if our source code is having bugs, issues, vulnerabilities, code smell, those kind of issues in this source code. Okay. Second thing that it's going to perform is known as code coverage. Code coverage is what? Basically, when we have multiple unit test cases, so what percentage of code is tested by running the unit test cases, that percentage is known as code coverage. Okay. These two things SonarQube does. Now, how exactly it works? So SonarQube is basically of two parts. One is known as scanner and one is known as server. Okay. So the actual analysis and the report generation of SonarQube analysis is done by scanner tool. Okay. It's going to perform the analysis and generate a report. Now, the report is generated by SonarQube scanner is not very user-friendly format. So for us to understand that report and fix the issues, that report is published to the server. Okay. That means two things we need to set up, scanner and server. And these two are different things. Scanner is the one performing the analysis, generating the report and publishing the report to SonarQube server. And what we see on the server, that is the report, okay, generated by scanner. So these two things we should understand very clearly. Okay. Now, I hope this was clear at least because I saw nobody was sharing this actually. Okay. So in order to set up SonarQube, what I'm going to do, I'm going to install Docker on this machine because we are going to set up SonarQube server using Docker container itself. Okay. And command we can get from here. Easy. This why this error is common, that has no installation candidate. You know why? Because we have not run the command here as sudo apt update. And that's what I am saying, that every time you create a virtual machine, you should always run the first command as sudo apt update to update, or basically all the packages that are present in default like Linux repository, they should become available for usage. Now if I run the same command sudo apt install docker.io, you can see now it has started to install, right? So remember this. These are very small things, but they matter a lot. And where is it? Again, to make sure that we have Docker permission to execute Docker commands, two things you can do. If you don't want to run that command, which I just showed you, this one. If you don't want to run that, what you can do, you can simply run this command with sudo. And considering the fact that here we just need to set up a container, we don't need to do too much things inside that, so we can use just sudo, right? Sudo docker run -d. Okay, now -d means running in detached mode. Detached mode means what? When we create a container, so many logs will be coming. So what we want, that those logs should not be visible on the front end UI, and they should be like getting done in backend. So for that, I'll just put -d, and after that I can provide the -p to publish the port. Okay, so two ports we need to define. One is known as host port, which is the I'm putting as 9000. What is host port? Host is our virtual machine, because that's where we are running the command. So that is the port that will be opened on this virtual machine. Second port is also going to be 9000. See, it's up to you what you want to set up, but by default SonarQube runs on 9000, so I'm setting up 9000. Now second port is the port that will be open on the container. Okay, and after that you need to provide the information about the Docker image of a SonarQube you want to use. As I said, we always go for LTS versions because they are kind of stable. So I'm going to use a Docker image SonarQube :LTS -community. Community version is basically means it's free, and there are other versions also in SonarQube development developer version, and we have enterprise version. Those are paid versions. Okay, I'm using community version because it's free, and click enter. Now it's going to first pull the Docker image and then create a container out of it. Let me check if anyone has queries or something. So batch 6. So actually, Shravan, we are going to use this one. Azure also and AWS also. AWS mainly for infra, basically creating virtual machines, EKS cluster, and other things. While on Azure, when it comes to like cloud DevOps part, so we are going to build an application on cloud and deploy it on like AKS app services, those things. Okay. We'll discuss in detail like what exactly we are going to cover in batch 6. Wait few minutes. Okay, and yeah, so here you can see that SonarQube container is created. How we can access it? So for SonarQube also, first of all, we'll go to get the public IP address, copy that, go on browser, and here we need to put the IP address of the host, okay, which is 9000. And you can see SonarQube is starting. Now, when you set up SonarQube, the default username and password in SonarQube is set up to admin and admin, which we need to change. Okay, so let's wait for this to come up. This will take few seconds actually. Okay, so SonarQube is set up. So by default, username and password will be admin admin. So as soon as provided, it gives us the option to update the password. So I'll provide the password as admin, old password. New password, you can set up anything you want. Click on update. Now, SonarQube is also set up. This is the SonarQube server. Okay. When I say SonarQube is set up, that means I have set up just now SonarQube server scanner, which is going to perform the analysis that we are going to add inside Jenkins. Okay. Okay. So this part is done. Now let us set up the last tool, which is Nexus. Okay. So I'll get the public IP address of Nexus. Go on MobaXterm, and let us create another duplicate session, and let us rename this to Nexus. Change the public IP address because the rest of the things are going to be same. Color also we can change. Let us set it to green. Okay. Now, again, for setting up Nexus, we are going to use Docker container. So first of all, always run the command sudo apt update. It's going to update all the packages, right? Before only you saw like what error was coming, no installation candidate. So to avoid that situation, make sure you run the command sudo apt update. Let's wait for this. Okay, so this is done. Now we need to install Docker. So I'm going to run the command to install docker.io, and it's going to install it. Let's wait for this. And in case of Nexus, as I told, that minimum 4 GB storage should always be available, because inside Nexus we have something like Orient DB, which requires that. Okay. So most of the cases, like in my company, many times we used to get this error, that crash loop backoff error when Nexus was deployed in Kubernetes. So the thing is, the case of crash loop backoff error, you cannot understand the reason of that without checking the logs. So whenever you see the crash loop backoff error, always go for the logs. In logs, you will be able to find the exact issue why it is not coming up. Okay. So now Docker is installed, and I'm going to use sudo, because just one command we have to run here. Sudo, and here we are going to run the command as sudo docker run -d for detached mode, -p for publishing port. By default, the default port for Nexus, which is set up to 8081. Okay. And here we need to provide the name of Sonar Nexus. So I'll type the name as SonarType / Nexus 3. Okay. This is the Docker image. If you're asking like how do I remember it, so basically I have just worked on it many times. That's why. In case you are new, like completely new, just search on Google Nexus 3 Docker image, and it will take you the official Docker image. And from here, there you can choose which one you want to use. Okay. This is the official Docker image, right? Okay. So this is done, and now you can click enter to set up Nexus. One more thing, from my experience, I'm telling this: when you set up Nexus, as compared to SonarQube, it takes more time to completely come up. So you need to wait at least 1 or 2 minutes once you create the container for Nexus, because it takes some time to completely come up. Okay. And few other things also I'm going to explain you in a minute. Okay. So see, container, it says if I run the command as sudo docker ps, you can see that container, it says created, right? But if I try to access it immediately, it might not be available right now. I can put the port for host, and you see it says cannot be reached, because Nexus is some kind of tool that takes quite some time to completely come up. Okay. So yeah, it will take few minutes. Yes, so DB is actually needed, but the version that I'm setting up, it has inbuilt one. Okay, because it's just for demo purpose. In companies, when we set up SonarQube, we have to set up this Postgres also. We were using Postgres DB for that. I'll be teaching that also as well in the course. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so aim of SonarQube, main point of SonarQube is to basically find out the issues in the source code. Issues in the source code before we deploy it, right? So what kind of issues can we get in our source code? We can get the issues like bugs could be there in our source code, that could be duplications of the code, right? So what we prefer to use, like we don't prefer to use duplicate code. Instead of that, we can create a function and call it again and again like that. That could be there. Then we could see like vulnerabilities in the source code. Vulnerabilities means like there could be some weak points. Okay, they are not properly written code. Okay, and similar to that, there are many other issues in the source code that one need to remember. So when we run the SonarQube analysis, this finding of these kind of issues in the source code, it is known as code quality check. When do we say that our code quality is good? When the source code is having very less number of these kind of things, then we say okay, code quality is good. Second thing that SonarQube help us do is basically when we run the test cases, the unit test cases that we have for the application. When we run that unit test cases, what its task? Its main point is uh, to figure out that like, to basically test the code. So whatever percentage of code is tested by running the test cases, that percentage of code is known as code coverage. For example, let's say we have 100 lines of code, 100 test cases, and we have around, let's say, 100 lines of code. So if I run 100 test cases and they were able to test only 80 lines of code, then we say that okay, 80% of code is covered by test cases, and that 80% is known as code coverage. Okay. Similar T2 medium or large shows. Yes, see, exact equivalent of T2 medium or large in Azure, it is. I cannot say. I need to check, but yeah, you can ping me separately. I'll just let you know. Okay, coming back. So here, if I again click on this Nexus URL. Now it should be up. You can see. That's why I was saying that Nexus takes some time to completely come up. Okay. Now let us do one thing. Let us sign in inside Nexus. So if I click on sign in, I'm sharing screen, right? Okay. Now you can see here by default what Nexus is saying. Just one more thing. So before this, like all the things that I did, it was visible on the screen, right? Just confirm in the chat, please. Okay. No, previously, whatever things I was setting up, all those things were visible on the screen, right? Okay, great. So now, when we set up Nexus, we need to set up a credential also. So here you can see the default username is going to be admin. So we can put it here. And the password is stored inside a file on admin password, right? Now, the thing is when you set up Nexus using Docker container, so this admin.password will be inside the Nexus container. So what we have to do, we need to go inside the Nexus container. How we can do that? First, I'll check the container. So container, this is the container ID. Okay. In order to go inside this container, what we have to do, we have to run a command known as docker exec. Okay. Docker exec basically executing a command, and after that we need to write -it. -it means interactive terminal. That means we are saying that we want to access our container through an interactive terminal. Okay. After IT, you need to just provide either you can provide the Docker image name or you can provide the container ID. Okay. After that, you need to define the kind of terminal with which you want to access the container. So you can go with bin/bash. I am saying that, okay, I want to access my Docker container using bash terminal and click enter. Now this you see bash 4.4. That means we are now inside the Docker container. Okay. If I run ls command, you can see now we are inside the Docker container of Nexus. Now, first thing you need to go inside, go Sonar type work. There you will see that we have folder Nexus 3. Go that, and now ls, and you can see there is a file admin.password. This is the file which contains the initial admin password. So I can run the command cat, sorry about that, cat and admin.password, and we got the initial password. So from here to here, we will avoid copying bash and paste it here. Click on sign in. Now, as you can see, we have signed in. Okay, but we need to create a new password. So I'll create a new password. Anything you can create, just make sure that they are matching. Click on next. We have this option, configure anonymous access. Depending on the requirement, you need to enable or disable. If you enable it, users can search, browse, and download components from repositories without credentials. Okay. So if you have Docker images, if you have like this one, or what is it called, like artifacts, so all those things will be able to be downloaded through URL instead of credentials, without credentials. So yeah, if you want to enable, you can just click on that. Next, click on next and finish. Now we have set up all the tools, whatever tools we need to work with, we have set up. Okay. Few other tools which will be needed, we are going to set up afterward. Okay. Now, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and you can ask.
Hi, Aditya. Good afternoon.
Please, one by one by. Sushmita, your voice is very loud.
Oh, sorry. Okay, just give me a minute. Is it okay now?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so I just wanted to know, like, we have created the Terraform files manually in the instance, right? So can we not
Yes.
clone the repo and use the
Yes, we
files?
can clone it, but since my repo is actually private, so if I need to clone it, I need to provide username and credentials, or basically a personal access token, and then we can go ahead.
Okay.
Both will work. Yeah.
And okay. And for different tools, we are using different VMs, right, to install the
Yes.
tools. So
Yes.
is it not okay to install all of them in a single or couple of?
So when we talk about like in companies, so they are not going to set up in single virtual machine, because if you set up on single virtual machine, if if you're setting up all the tools in single virtual machine, if the VM goes down, all the tools will be going down. So in companies, we prefer to use like all these tools, all these servers on separate machines, or separate Kubernetes pods. Any
And
other
last
question?
2 more questions, sorry. We are manually installing the tools using the scripts, right? So in real time, do we use Ansible playbooks, and what all tools we can use
See, the thing is key, setting up these tools, we don't use Ansible. At least, like in my company, we were not using it. We were deploying these tools to Kubernetes pods. For that, we have YAML files.
Okay.
Uh,
And in my project, I'm actually in a release management team. So I have seen teams using SonarQube and also Fortify together. So can you give a brief on the Fortify? Why is it used?
Fortify later we can discuss. It's not the part of this session.
Okay.
Later we can discuss.
Okay. No problem. Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions, team? Or we can go ahead. Rajesh, you are asking when we need the first module open. So yeah, we'll be connecting on, if you are enrolled in batch 6, we'll be connecting on upcoming 30th. So we'll discuss everything. I'll provide the details. Okay. Okay. One more thing, team. If no other questions, we can proceed. And before that, let me just explain you what exactly we are going to have in the upcoming batch. Okay. So basically, in batch 6, first of all, if you click on this, then you automatically a coupon will be applied and you can get this course for 7559. First thing you need to understand that everything we are going to learn from scratch and from scratch to advance. And the way that I'm going to teach, I choose the tools which are already mentioned in the syllabus, the tools that I have actually worked in companies. So I can teach you the real time how those tools are configured, how these are like being used in companies, what kind of issues do we get from completely interview point of view. Talking about the projects, so projects, we are going to have 10 hands-on projects. Where is it? Let me just show you that as well. Mm, 10 hands-on project we are going to have in the batch 6, which is going to be CRUD based Java full stack application, Node.js full stack application, portfolio website, a virtual browser, and 3 multi-tier applications we are going to have to showcase how we can integrate MySQL database, how we can integrate MongoDB, how we integrate Postgres database. Then we are going to have a microservice based application, and we are going to build and deploy this application in different ways to make you understand like what is the better option that we can do. After that, a few real world application we are going to have. .NET based application also we are going to have for monitoring application, and then we are going to have Python based application. So in total 10 hands-on then applications will be there which we are going to do hands-on implementation. Okay. And after that 5 applications will be there which actually will help you understand the kind of project that exist in companies, and this will help you a lot when you are going for like interviews. Also, the best part about this batch 6 is that I'll be connecting to each one of them, whoever is enrolled, and I'll help you prepare your resume. If you are transitioning to different like from different domain to DevOps, then I'll help you understand what project is better to add in the resume, how to explain, what kind of tasks should be added. All those things will be explained to you. Okay. For any queries you can just, yes, Satyendra, we are going to cover K8 deployment using RBAC in this session, so do not worry about that. Yes, Shravan, we are going to have hands-on in these projects. Do not worry about that as well. And what cloud platform you are going to use upcoming batch? So we are going to use AWS also and Azure also, because in my opinion, the reality is that at this point, these two cloud platforms are the one who are highest in the demand. Azure DevOps, I actually work in current company, so I can explain you in real time how things happen. Because currently I work in as you know MNC company. I handle total 32 projects in Azure purely. Somewhere like for some applications I deploy to AKS, for some app service, for some data factory, Databricks, SQL, and so many other things. So I can explain you in real time how things happen. So for CI/CD, we are going to use Azure DevOps and few of the Azure resources for deployment. And for AWS, we are going to use for infrastructure. I'm going to use virtual machines from AWS, EKS, ECR, and few other resources we are going to use from this AWS. Okay, Rajesh, you can ping me separately. You don't have to ping the same thing again and again. Okay, and okay, one second. The project like deploying Node.js using, yes, Ganesh, we'll be having that as well. Gaurav, how you can practice lab free tier. Free account you should be creating, Gaurav, but the thing is, if you want to really practice properly without getting any issues or without the VM being hanging, you should take at least T2 medium machine, which is going to cost, but the cost is very less. 50-60 rupees it will be costing for one session like that. So it won't be like too much. Okay. Yes, Shravan, you can easily handle real-time projects and okay. And what else we have? Yes, Ganesh, once you are in the course, you'll be getting all the projects either from the website or I'll be sharing you directly over the group. For non-IT students, yes, Naveen, most of like there were a few people from previous batches. There was one guy who was in call center who did not have any experience in DevOps, but he actually got the job eventually. So the way that I'm going to teach, first of all, it's purely based on real time, how things happen in real time, and it's going to be from scratch to advance. Okay. So trust me, if you enroll, definitely, first of all, I'll be providing a dedicated support. If you have any doubts, you can directly connect to me also. I can explain you again, so it won't be an issue. Okay. If you explain Maryland structures and tools into they will why this is going one second. So into they'll be easy to find. So I'm not saying that you need to explain in manual installation. That's these things. That's what I'm saying. These things we'll be discussing in properly in course. In company, we are not setting up tools manually. We are setting up through Kubernetes clusters. We have YAML files for that. Career gap students should join depending on how much you are having. Other ways, there could be other ways also, but most highly like suggested ways is to use AWS CLI only. Okay. Now again, I'll take the questions later on. Now let us proceed with the session. Okay. And okay. So now we have set up all the tools and Jenkins we need to configure. So we need to provide username, then a password. Then again, we'll provide the password, a name, and an email address you can put. I click on save and continue. So now what we have done, we have set up Jenkins. Okay. But again, since we are using so many different tools also, which we need to integrate with Jenkins, that means we need to basically install plugins of different tools in Jenkins. So for that, we can go to manage Jenkins. And one more thing that someone was asking, key which tool we need to install on Jenkins and which tool we need to install on directly on virtual machine on which Jenkins is running. So for example, consider the example of Trivi. Now, Trivi is a kind of tool whose plugin is not available by default inside Jenkins plugin. So if I want to use Trivi inside Jenkins, I need to install it directly on the virtual machine on which Jenkins is running. Okay. Now I can go to plugin section and let us install the plugins. I'll explain also which plugin I'm installing for what. First of all, we'll install stage view so that we can view the details of our running pipeline in over the stage. Then I'm going to install a plugin known as Eclipse Temurin installer. Basically, it is possible that if you're working in a project, it is possible that you might be needed to use different version of Java in different projects or different pipelines. So in that case, you can use this plugin to install multiple version of Jenkins, multiple version of Java. After that, I'm going to install Sonar. Now you can see the name SonarQube scanner, and this is the scanner that I was talking about. So scanner is we are going to set up now. Okay. After that, we need to search for Maven, and for Maven, you need to install first this one, and this one. Okay. This is going to be Maven integration, and this is going to be Maven integration for pipeline, which I'll explain why we need it. And we have this config file provider. Now, basically, when you want to publish your artifact to Nexus, you need to authenticate to Nexus, right? So the credential for authenticating Nexus is provided inside a file which is named as settings.xml file. So that file we need to have inside Jenkins, and that we can get using this one. Okay. After that, I'm going to install Docker plugin as well. First select this one and then Docker pipeline, these two. And then we need to set up Kubernetes plugin because we are going to connect to Kubernetes as well. So I'll click on Kubernetes and we need to install Kubernetes. Okay, so these two I'm selecting, Kubernetes and Kubernetes CLI. But you will see that even this will getting installed because these are dependent plugins on this. Now these are the plugins that we need to install. So I'll click on install, and this takes few minutes to completely install. Okay. And once these tools are installed, few of them we need to configure. Okay. And that we are going to configure inside this one, a tool section. Give me one second. I got some mail. Okay. So now let's wait for this. Once this is done, then I'll show you how we can write pipelines. Okay, and this part, make sure that you are watching properly, because pipeline is written in Groovy script, and for some people it seems very hard, but in reality, writing a pipeline is the easiest thing you can do. Okay, now this is done. All the tools are installed. Now we need to go to Manage Jenkins tools. Here we need to configure the tools. Okay, first of all, we have JDK. Now here, let us say I want to use specific version JDK 17. And one more thing that I'll tell you, that it's not mandatory that you need to configure it, because as I said, when we set up Jenkins, by default we need to install one Java, right? So that Java is already present. But in case you want to use different version, you can configure here. Let's say I'll click on install automatically. And here, second option that you see, install from adoptium.net. This option is visible because we have installed the plugin 𝗘𝘅𝗃𝗃 installer. Okay. And here we can select the version, whichever we want to use. I'll just go with this one. After that, you can see there is the option to add another version. So you can add multiple version of JDK. Okay. I have configured just one. Scrolling down to SonarQube. Now this is a option. This option is also available, SonarQube installation. And this option is available. Now this is specifically for .NET project, but this is for all sorts of projects. So always go with this one. And I'm going to go with naming this Sonar-Scanner. Okay. After that, you can select the version you want. I'll just leave it the latest one. And scroll down to Maven. And here, type the name as Maven 3 or anything you want. That is up to you. And here version you can select. I'll just leave it as it is. And finally, we have Docker. So here I'll just name it as Docker. See, whatever tool you want to configure, always go with install automatically, because when you install the plugin, multiple option you get from here. And this is the option that we are going to choose, and we are going to set up latest version. Click on apply. Now tools have been configured, right? Now we can start writing the pipeline. So for that, I'll click on new item, and let us provide a name. So I'll just provide the name as task-master. And here multiple types of pipeline we are having. Okay, in course I have taught properly this multi-branch pipeline. This is the actual pipeline that is being used in companies for a bigger project with multi environments. Okay, but here we are just for doing demo, we can just go ahead with declarative one. Click on that and click on OK. Now this this is a job. Pipeline is going to be written here, but this is Jenkins job. Okay, here first option is discard old builds. So as part of best practice, always make sure that you keep like less number of builds that you want to see in history, because if you are not putting this, so many builds will be, the previous builds will be available in the history, which is going to occupy a space, lot of space. So to avoid that, we should be doing this. Now coming down here, now it's time to write the pipeline. If you are newbie, completely new person, make sure you take a hello world pipeline. You take a hello world pipeline. Okay, so a template or basically a structure will be created. Once it is created, you can see we have stage, right? So how to proceed? So basically, let me explain you one more thing. So this is the pipeline block. Okay, after that we have written agent any. That means ki whatever agent is available, if we have multiple slaves, then whatever is available, it's this pipeline will run on it. Okay, we have another option also. We can define here key on which agent we want to build. So that also we can do. That is later part. Now stages. So let us create multiple stages which we are going to write. As I said, writing pipeline is not hard. So 4 stages I have created with the same name. One more thing you need to remember, no 2 stage can have same name. Okay. So let us now edit this pipeline. So first stage that I want to have is going to be git checkout. Git checkout is what? Git checkout is basically creating a local copy of the GitHub repository inside Jenkins, so that Jenkins can use the local repository to build the project. Okay. Again, let's say I don't know how to write the git checkout step. So you can go with this pipeline syntax. Click on that. New page will open, and here we'll select git. Now here it becomes very much easier. You just need to provide it information about repo. I put the repo, then branch name. Now the thing is, if your repo is private, you need to provide credentials, which I'll discuss in a bit. So since as of now this repo is completely public, so I can just click on generate the script, copy this command and paste it here. First stage is done. Second stage that we have is going to be, let's say I want to check out if my source code is having any kind of syntax error. Syntax means like if we missed any kind of bracket, missed any comma or like that. So for that we can perform compile. And in compile stage you can write what we do. In case of Maven project, we run the command as Maven compile. But one thing as you need to understand that this is a Groovy script. So in order to make this pipeline understand that this is just shell script, this Maven compile command is a shell command, we need to enclose it inside shell block. How we can do that? We can write as such, and this part we need to write inside quotes. Single or double, both will work fine. So now this stage will understand, okay, Maven compile command, I need to run it as shell. Jenkins will understand that. Okay. After compilation, let's say I want to perform run test cases. So I'll write the stage name as I'll write it as unit test. And here also we need to run the Maven command as Maven test. Again, we need to make sure that Jenkins understands that Maven test is a shell command and needs to be treated like that. So I will enclose it inside shell. Okay. This is done. Now, after unit test cases, yeah, SonarQube, as I mentioned, it's going to perform code coverage also and code quality check. So make sure that SonarQube is run after the unit test cases and not before it. Okay. So next stage would be to Sonar analysis. Okay. Now, one more thing that you need to understand that whatever tools we have configured in Manage Jenkins inside tool section, if I want to use those tools in my pipeline, I need to define them in my pipeline. Okay. For example, I'm using Maven, right? And Maven also here we have configured Maven installation, right? That means if I want to use Maven 3 in my pipeline, I need to define it. How we can define? One of the easiest way to define a tool is like that. Tools block we will create. Inside that, first we need to write the tool type. So Maven 3 which we have configured is a tool type of Maven, and tool name in quotes. So tool name we have configured is Maven 3. JDK also, if the new version of JDK which I have configured, this one JDK 17, if I want to use it, I need to define it here. Okay. But since already we are having one JDK 17 set up inside the Jenkins server, so we don't need to manually define it. Okay. Now Maven is defined. Next stage is to Sonar analysis. Okay. So before we proceed with Sonar analysis, let us configure a few more things. I'll click on apply to save this. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, that we have these two things: SonarQube scanner and SonarQube server. That means scanner is going to perform the analysis and upload the report on server, right? But server needs to be authenticated with Jenkins, then only server will be like connected, right? So for that, first of all, what we need to do, we need to go to our server, go on administration, security, users, and here this is the current user, like administrator, right? So we are going to generate a token. We are going to provide a name of the token, click on generate, and this token will be used for authentication inside Jenkins. Okay. So we will go inside Jenkins, we need to go to manage Jenkins, go to system. System is the place where we can configure servers. Okay. Servers like SonarQube. Now, if I scroll down, you'll be able to see this option, SonarQube servers, right? Here we need to configure the server details. Okay. One more thing you need to understand that this option that you are seeing, it is available because we have installed the plugin SonarQube scanner. Okay. Now, before we add the SonarQube here, we need to add our credentials inside Jenkins. So for that, I'll go to manage Jenkins, credentials, global, because we want that our credentials should be given a global scope. Sorry. Click on add credentials, and now we have generated a token, right? That means token is a kind of secret text. Okay, here you need to select kind. You can see there are multiple options. We have selected secret text, so we'll paste our token here, provide a name as, let's say, sonar-token. Make sure that you are changing the ID, because by default if you don't change ID, it will comes like very complex numbers. So just change it by as per your own. Okay, I have written SonarQube token and click on create. Token is configured. Now we can go back to system, scroll down to SonarQube servers and click on add SonarQube. Here, let us provide the name as Sonar and URL. So URL we can select from here till 9000 we need to copy. I can paste here, remove the last slash, and here we can select the token that we configured. Okay. That means now SonarQube server is also configured inside Jenkins. Okay. So now we can go ahead and click on configure the pipeline, and now we can write the stages for Sonar analysis. Now, as I mentioned, whenever you want to use a tool that you have configured inside tool section through plugins, you need to define it manually in your pipeline for usage. That means we need to define SonarQube scanner also, because we have configured SonarQube scanner also. If I show you in tool section, you can see we have configured SonarQube scanner, right? That means we need to define it. How we can define? So another way of defining tools is that we can create environment. We create an environment, and inside environment, I can create a variable scanner underscore home, whose value will be SonarQube scanner. So I'll be providing the tool and then tool name, which we have sonar dash scanner. Okay. We basically created a environment inside which we created a variable for SonarQube scanner. Okay. Now, in order to write these stages here, what we need to do, again, let's say I don't know how to write. So basically I can just go ahead with pipeline syntax. Let me close this. And here you'll be able to see some option like with SonarQube environment like this. Now, click on this, generate this block and copy that. And let us paste it here. Now here you see that it is written credential ID. That means it is saying that, okay, for in this block, basically, with SonarQube environment, in this block, we need to provide the information about the server that I want to publish the report to server. Here you can see it's written as credential ID sonar token. What it's assuming that I'm going to provide the URL of the server inside the block. But what I say, since we have already configured the server, if I show you this one, so we have already configured the server here, right, with the name Sonar. That means instead of providing this token credentials, simply we can put the name of the server that we configured. Okay, and here we can write the steps to perform analysis. Now, steps how we can write, again shell block, and you see generally I use single quotes, right? But in case you have multiple lines of code, and you want Jenkins to treat it as a single whole line, in that case you can just go ahead and put 3 quotes. Then Jenkins will treat it as a single line. Okay. So now we need to perform this scanning. For that, we can call this one, the environment that we have defined, by $, scanner underscore home /bin /sonar scanner. Do not worry, I'll explain it in a bit. Why I am writing bin sonar scanner? Because when even on like Linux machine, when you install any tool, so there will be one executable file of that tool. Okay, executable file is the file that is going to run to start the process. Okay, and that file exists inside bin folder of that project. Similarly, for our sonar scanner tool, the executable file of sonar scanner exists inside this folder, which is this one. So we are basically calling that executable file to start the process. Okay, and that's what I have written here. After that, we need to define some parameters. And for SonarQube, we have specific format, capital D, sonar dot project name and capital, equal to, let's say I'll provide the name as task master. It's up to you what you want to write. And second parameter which we want to have, D, sonar dot project key. Key is the unique identification way to basically differentiate between projects. Project key, and here also it's up to you what you want to put. Task master I'm putting. Okay, let's say next line is next command is in second line, so I'll just put a slash, and here also last parameter which we need to add, d sonar dot java dot binaries. The thing is in Maven based projects we have a binaries file also. When we build the project, we get binaries file, so we need to provide the location for this. Okay, and this is mandatory just in case of Java. In other program, and for other programming language based applications, you need to use this command same as this one till here. Just for Java, we need to put it here. So I'll put target and close this. Okay. Now SonarQube analysis is done. Now let us write the next stage, which is going to be trivia. So what I want before SonarQube analysis happens, I want to perform a dependency check on our source code as well. I have just added another stage, and here make sure that no two stages should be having same name. Here I'm going to write as trivia fs scan. Fs scan means file system scan we want to perform. Now, as I told one more thing, that Trivy plugin is not available on Jenkins. That means we need to install Trivy manually on the server where Jenkins is installed. So I'll go here on Jenkins, and here we need to install Trivy. So for that, I can search on Google as Trivy install Ubuntu or Trivy install, whatever you want, you can search. Click on the first link, and it's going to give you the command to install. So I'll copy the commands, go back, create, let's say, a script t.sh, paste it here, save this, change the permission sudo chmod +x t.sh and execute it by running this command. Now it's going to install Trivy on our virtual machine on which Jenkins is running, and after that, inside Jenkins also we'll be able to execute the Trivy commands. Okay, so this is done, and next step we can write inside here. Here we can write quotes Trivy fs. Fs means file system we want to scan. Then after that we can define like in what format we want the report. So I can write -- format, and I want the report to be in tabular format. So I will write table, and then it's asking that in what file you want the report to be created. So I'll write it -o for output, and I want the report inside a file fs.html format. Okay, and then just put a dot. Dot means scan the current folder, okay, which is the root directory. Now what this is going to do is going to perform the Trivy fs scan. Now after that, what I want to build the application. So I will write this stage here, and here I will run the command as, sorry, stage name will be build application, and here for building I can run the command as maven package. Okay, now after this is done, let me save it also. What we can do, let us just test it one time by running this, so we can confirm that okay, till now whatever we have written, it's running fine. We can see the stages here, and one thing you notice that unpacking 2 times. So when you whatever tool you have defined in your pipeline and it's being running for the first time, so whatever tool you have defined, they are getting installed now. That means configuring in the tool section in manage Jenkins does not install the tool. Installing is happening here. Okay, and this will run. Let me scroll to the end. So yeah, test cases ran, and like one is fine. Now it's running Trivy scan report. And next up we have SonarQube. Okay, so let's wait for this to complete. And we can see the stages here also. And by default, this stage view that you are seeing, it has been removed. That means if you want to use stage view by default, you need to install this pipeline stage view plugin. Okay, and going back to logs, you can see now it's building the application. Okay, so pipeline is success. Okay, now we can go to SonarQube and let us refresh the page, and we can see that Taskmaster project has been created on SonarQube. Okay, so this is fine. Coming back. Okay, so till this we have done. Next step is basically to publish the artifact to Nexus, build the Docker image, tag the Docker image, scan the Docker image, push the Docker image, and deploy the application to Kubernetes. And after the application is deployed, I'm going to like map the map the application to 𝗘𝘅𝗃𝗃 website. Okay, that's what we are going to do. But yeah, team, let's take 5 minutes break because I have been speaking for quite some time. Okay, let me drink water and then we'll come. Okay, so let's take 5 minutes break and then we'll continue. Okay, so I hope my screen is visible. Coming back here, Now what I want that, I want to configure Nexus stage so that we can publish the artifact to Nexus. Okay. Now, if I go back to repository, and one very important thing you will see here, it's written as 1.0 snapshot. Okay. And I'll explain in a bit why this matters. Okay. So first of all, let us configure Nexus inside Jenkins as well. Okay. So first of all, what we have to do, I'll explain. Two things we need to do. First is that for connecting to Nexus, first we need URL of Nexus, right? Second thing that we need is credentials to access Nexus, right? Someone please confirm if I'm audible and screen is also visible. Please confirm. Okay. Now coming back. So these two things are mandatory for in order to basically see any website is there. If you want to access it, you need to have the URL of website and credentials, right? So first of all, we need to add the URL. So where do we add the URL? So basically, we want to publish the application, Maven application, right? So what I'm going to do, we need to add one section. I'll show you. We need to add the URL inside our project, and inside project we have this file pom.xml, which is storing basically the repository, storing the artifacts and dependencies, right? If I go at the end, you will see one section as this one. Now this is the section where we can define the URL of Nexus repository. You can see repository and snapshot repository. Now the question is, what exactly is the difference between Maven releases and Maven snapshot? So when you are deploying to some lower environment or storing the artifact for lower environment below prod, then that artifact will be stored automatically in snapshots. And when you want to use the artifact for deploying the application to prod environment, then those artifacts are this one, releases. Okay. And let me remove the previous URL first and update it with the new ones. So new URL you can get by going to Nexus, browse. You can see Maven releases, Maven snapshot, and do not worry, we discuss in course in detail all of these. Okay. So for Maven releases, I'll get the IP URL, copy that and paste it here. Similarly, for Maven snapshots, I'll copy this, get the URL and paste it here. Now I will copy this steps, and we need to paste it in our project. Okay. So I'll go to the project. You can see here also we have added, right? We just need to update this. What I'll do, I'll remove this first and paste the one that we have just created, our own. Okay. So this part is done, means URL we have added. Now we need to add the credential for our application. So for that, what we are going to do, let me save this. Dashboard, manage Jenkins. And you remember we installed a plugin config file provider. Okay. So because of that plugin, you will be able to see managed files. So click on that, config files, sorry, add new config, global Maven settings. So what I want that this settings file should be available to all the projects. Okay. So I'll select global and let us provide a name here as settings dash Maven. Okay. Click on next. And here you see this file, XML file. This is the file inside which we need to add the credential for Nexus. So I'll scroll down. Now, this section that you see, I'll copy, remove this. So this is the section where we need to add the credentials. So I'll copy this and paste it. Next line. Okay. First one we need to have is the ID of first repo. So we have two repo, Maven releases, Maven snapshots. So name will be ID as well, Maven dash releases. Then username we need to put. Username is admin, and password we need to put, which I'm going to write as Aditya. Okay. And similarly, let me copy this part. Sorry. Here it's going to be Maven snapshots. As I said, remember that Maven snapshot is for lower environments. And this will be, username will be admin, password will be the one that we set up. Okay, so these things are configured. That means now we have configured the credentials also and URL also. If I click on edit, also see, in case you don't want to add the credentials here because this file is visible, you can add the credential here also, server ID and credentials, right? So we have both options available. Okay, so this is done. Now we can go to our pipeline. Yeah, one more thing that you need to understand here, that in case you are deploying multiple artifacts, same artifact. Okay, so that means ki redeploy should be allowed. So for that we need to enable it. If I click on settings, repositories, Maven snapshot, scroll down, and you can see this option. This option should be enabled. Okay, so this is one, and in Maven releases also it should be there. You can see it is here, disable redeploy. So if you want, because the reason that in the snapshot it is allowed, but in releases it's not allowed. The reason that it's not allowed in releases because it is preferred that it is understood that we are keeping the production level artifacts inside releases. That means we don't want to keep multiple times, we want to deploy the same artifact. Okay, but since lower environment is Maven snapshot, that means we are going to do it multiple times, right? So there it is allowed by default. Okay, still here I'll just allow for demo and save this. Okay, now here we need to write the stages for Nexus. For that we will go at the end, and first of all let us Maven stage, this is done, right? After that I need to add another stage which is for Nexus. Let me make it big. Here I'll write the stage name as publish artifact. Okay, now we need to write the here commands. So what we are going to do, we are going to take help from pipeline syntax. We'll close this, and here we will be able to find one option with Maven like this. Why this option is visible to us? Because we have installed the plugin Maven integration and pipeline Maven integration. Here we will select the Maven JDK if you want to use specific, and here you will see this option global Maven settings, and this is the one that we are going to use. Okay, this is the one that we set up, settings.xml. Click on this. This is the block created. Okay, now you see this ID. This is the ID name that we gave to our global Maven settings file, right? So from this we can understand. Copy this block, paste it here. Okay, now as you see, most of the things that you are seeing, I don't have to write literal like manually. I don't have to write. Most of the things are coming in template form. I can just copy, paste, and modify. Right? That's why I'm saying ki writing Jenkins pipeline is quite easy. Now here, just we need to write sh mvn deploy. Now, if I run this command, what do you think? Where exactly this is going to be deployed? It's going to be deployed to Maven snapshot. But as soon as I remove this snapshot, automatically this artifact will be deployed to Maven releases. Okay, that is one of the main differences. Okay, so this is done. Next up, what I want that let us build a Docker images. So I'll copy and create another stage. Let us rename this to Docker build and tag. What I want that I want to build a Docker image and tag it to some specific like name. Now, in order to write Docker commands, what we can do, again, we can take help from pipeline syntax here, and at the end, you'll be able to see with Docker registry. Click on that. And now, if you are using a private Docker registry, then you need to provide the registry URL here. In case you are using Docker Hub, then you don't need to put a URL. Talking about credentials, so our own Docker Hub credentials we need to put here. That we can configure by clicking on Add Jenkins, and here you can provide the username. This is your username from Docker Hub, password, and an ID. ID you can put like Docker cred. Okay, and click on Add, and you can select it from here and select the Docker tool that we configured and generate the block. Now this is the block that we are going to use. So I'll paste it here. You can see in the basically in Docker block we have defined the credentials and the tool, right? And here I can run the command sh quotes docker build -t means we want to tag it also. So, and also, when you want to push the Docker image, make sure that you are writing in the format your username first. After that, the Docker image name, which is going to be, let's say, taskmaster, and version I want as latest. After that, we need to put a dot. Dot basically provides the information that current Docker file is present in the current directory. Okay. If it is present on somewhere else, you need to provide the path here. Okay. Now let us run this again and let us see if these two stages are working fine or not. Now error coming immediately, that means some syntax might be wrong. Okay, and docker create, let me see. Okay, so basically in case of Docker, what we try to do, we include this block inside script. The reason that we have to do this because this Jenkins may not always understand that it has to run in a specific format. So specifically for Docker commands, we need to include it inside the script. And let us see here, and I'll just add one more, this one, and let us try to run this. Now I can see it has started to run, right? This will just confirm that all the commands are correct or not. For Docker, again, I'm saying, see, the reason that we have to script block sometimes, not always, because the commands that we have written, we need to mention to the Jenkins that this needs to be run in a script format. Okay, and for Docker specifically, we need to use that. Okay, this will take few minutes, and then we'll be proceeding with Kubernetes. And also for this Kubernetes deployment, we are going to use best practice, which is to be using RBAC, okay, and service accounts. So let's wait for this. Let us see the logs for publishing the artifact stage. You can see here, where is it? This is the artifact name, okay? And yeah, we can check it on Nexus. If I go to this, go to browse, snapshots, and you can see the artifact is deployed, the jar file, right? So that means it is working fine, and we are able to connect to Nexus and publish artifact also, okay? And Docker image also got built. So this is good. After that, we need to write these stages for, see, Docker build is done. Now, before we publish this Docker image, what I want to scan the Docker image for issues, basically vulnerabilities in the Docker image. So I'll add a stage for trivia image scan. So one more thing, let me show you. If I open this, open the latest builds workspace. So whatever byproducts are created while building the application or running the pipelines, we get that inside this workspace. You see this target file, you see this fs.html. What is fs.html? The report that we generated. One second. You can see it's properly coming in tabular format. Okay. So report is also generated, and if I open target folder, you'll be able to see the jar file. Okay. So workspace is the place where you will see all the things like the whatever byproducts is coming, it will be there. Okay. Coming back here. So now I want to perform Docker image scan. So for that, we need to write Docker image. And here you just need to change the Docker image name. In our case, image name is this one. I'll copy that, paste it here. One more thing, fs, I'll write the name as image.html. Okay, this is done. Next step would be to push the Docker image to our Docker Hub repository. Okay, so here we can change the stage name to Docker push, and here we can change the stage to command to Docker push image name, and make sure to remove the dot. Now till Docker we have written, and next step would be to deploy the application using Kubernetes and then verifying the deployment. Now In order to perform the deployment to Kubernetes, two options we can have. Either we can directly use the kube-config file, but the default kube-config file, it is like having root level access. So in companies, we don't prefer to have root level access for deployment. What we do, we create a like service account and give some level of permission to service account and do the deployment through that service account. So using root, we are not doing deployment. Now, how to do that service account configuration? Okay. By the way, the whole process of the service account configuration, it's known as RBAC. RBAC is short for role-based access control. Basically, what we do, first we created a service account. Okay. Let's say I created a service account named Jenkins. Then we create a role. Inside role, we define that I want different level of permission on this resources like pods, deployment, and everything. What permission I want? Get, list, watch, create, update, patch, delete. That is all, right? So then what we do, we assign this role to this service account. That means now the service account will be having these permissions. Now assigning of the role to this service account is known as binding, and for binding we have a different object inside Kubernetes which is known as role binding. Okay. Now in role binding, role also, two kind of roles we have. One is like cluster role. Cluster role is global, basically over the cluster level, while if you're just creating role, then that is specific to a namespace. Okay. For example, the role that I'm creating, you can see it is written namespace name. That means this role is specific to this namespace web apps. Okay. I have explained in detail over the course also. Okay. So this is done. And once this part is done, then what we do, we create a token for our service account. Now, first of all, let us create service account. So I'll copy this command and let us go to server. As I said, we have created server just to like work few commands, run few commands on the Kubernetes cluster. First of all, I'm going to create sa.yaml, paste the service account, save this. Now the thing you see here, namespace is also written, but namespace web apps is not created. That means if I want to run the service account creation process, we need to make sure that we have web apps namespace created. For that, I can run the command kubectl create ns, then namespace name. Once you do this, then you can run the command kubectl apply-f si.yaml, and this is created. Now the service account created inside the web apps namespace. Second thing that we need to do is create role.yaml, and here we need to write the role YAML. Now we have done that. Again, namespace is already created, so we can simply run the command kubectl apply-f, then YAML file name. A role is also created. Now what we are going to do, assign this role or basically bind this role to service account so that service account can have different permissions. Okay, that we can do using binding. So I'll create another one, vi bind.yaml. Paste this and save this. And let us run this as well. Okay. Now the service account is having the permission to create resources or do the deployment. Okay. Next step would be to create a secret of our service account. Basically, that secret will be having a token which we can use for authentication. Okay. So I have shared the link also. This is the official page. So I'm going to create a secret. I'm going to copy this, create a file as sec.yaml, paste it here. Now, one thing that you might be noticing, first of all, service account name is different. That means we need to change it. In our case, we have created a service account named Jenkins, right? Second thing, here you don't see any web apps like namespace name, right? But still we want to create this service inside namespace. So in that case, we can run the command at kubectl apply-f sec.yaml-n web apps. This last command -n web apps means that we are trying to create this secret inside web apps namespace. Okay. Once we have done that, you can simply get the token by running the command kubectl describe secret. The secret name is my secret name, and this is existing inside web apps, right? Now, this token that you see, this is the token that we are going to use for authentication. So I will copy that and let us save it somewhere. Okay. Now, coming back to Jenkins. Let me save this and let us go to, yeah, okay. So let us write the steps for uh, uh, this one, Kubernetes deployment. So I'll create a stage by copying this, and here the name of the stage will be KA8 deploy. Okay. And again, we need to write the stage commands for deploying, right? So generally the command that you already know, we run the command like kubectl apply so and so, right? So here also similar kind of command we need to write, but we need to define that we want to execute this command on the cluster, right? So for that we can take help from pipeline syntax. And here we'll be able to find some options, something like with Kubernetes or something. You can see this option with kubeconfig. Okay, now talking about credentials, so we need to add the token that we just copied. Kind will be secret text and the token. So token we have this one. I'll copy this, paste it here. Let me just confirm the token is correct. 𝗘𝘅𝗃𝗃. Okay, fine. ID we can put as k token and save this. Add, select the token. Server endpoint. So we have created the server endpoint as created the cluster over EKS. So we'll go to EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service, open the cluster, and you can see this is the server endpoint, right? So just copy that and paste it inside the syntax. Yeah, this one. Okay. Cluster name. So that is also we have present DevOps Shack cluster. Copy that, paste it here. Namespace, we have namespace which is web apps, right? And that's all we need to add. And you can see this block seems very complex, but it's not. We are writing manually, right? Automatically we can just put the details and it created the cluster. I created the block. Now we can keep the block here. Okay. And here we need to run the command as sh quotes kubectl apply -f the YAML file name, right? One more thing we need to do, we need to copy this Docker image name, go to our repository. Where is it? Deployment service YAML. So we want that our latest Docker image should be used, and yeah, this image is correct, taskmaster. Okay, so make sure that image whichever you want to use, make sure you are mentioning that. Okay, and we are using load balancer service type, so it's going to create a URL. Okay, so this is fine. Now we can just provide the name of the file, which is this one. Copy that and paste here. Okay, sorry about that. Now this command is supposed to create the resources defined in deployment service YAML file. Okay, and here since we already written namespace, so it won't be having issues. Okay, one more thing that I want before we run the second stage, which is basically to verify the deployment. What I want that it should be sleeping for 30 seconds. That means, you know, when you create a deployment, it takes some time to completely come in running state. So before we try to verify the deployment, I want that we should be waiting for 30 seconds. Okay, and after that we can check. So now next command would be, I'll copy this, paste it here, and here we can write the stage name as verify create deployment. Okay, and here I'll remove this, and here I can run the command kubectl get pods -n web apps. Even the web apps I have written, but just for the namesake I'm writing the command as -n web apps, just so you know that when we want to view resources from some namespace, we can write in this format. Then again, I'll run the command 𝗘𝗅𝗃 get svc-n web apps. We can do that and seems fine. So let us run this and let's see what happens. Again, it's going to take some time because a lot of stages are going to be coming. Once everything is done, then we are going to map this domain with our URL. Any other questions anyone having? Yes, so Shusmita, in we inside settings.xml file, we have two options to provide credentials. One is like directly adding the credentials inside this. We have this file. Where is it? One option is directly providing the credential here in this settings.xml file, or you can add the credential here. This is the more secure option. Here also test cases, you can see just one test case we are having just this is also passing. Okay. Let us check out the logs just to confirm everything fine. Okay, Docker push is happening for the Docker image now. On this website, it will be available, Ram. Only on the website, actually. Okay. So we have some issue. Okay. So the issue that we saw that kubectl not found. That means we need to make sure that on our Jenkins server, kubectl is present. So what we can do, we can go to Jenkins. We can run the command as kubectl. It's not present. We can install it immediately. I can run --classic. It's going to install kubectl. Once this is done, again, as you can see, I'm installing this tool directly on Jenkins virtual machine, right? That means by default, it should be available in the pipeline for usage. So let's wait for this. Okay. Now, one more time, let us run this pipeline. Okay, guys, meanwhile, if you are having any, sorry, my screen is visible, right? If you are having any queries, you can unmute and you can ask regarding course or regarding the pipeline, anything you can ask now. And you can see inside Nexus, since that redeploy is enabled, that's why we are having two versions, version 1, version 2 of the jar file. Okay. Yes, Nilupa, we have that option. We can use like build. There are certain variables, default variables present, which is like the build ID, build number, like that. So if you want, you can use those variables to automatically update. Yeah, to make the tag variable auto update. That for that also we have some other option that we'll be discussing it later on. The once again on Monday. So Naveen, Monday to Friday record class latest. Some will be pre-batch, like previous batch videos. Some will be latest videos. Because the thing is, I try to use latest tools, latest version of tools. So if in previous batch, if I use any tools that is not upgraded, I can just directly share to you. If the tool is upgraded, or if I need to add more topics, I can record it and I can share it to you. So Sangeet, as of now, we are taking the artifact from the target folder as of now. But in companies, we take it from Nexus. For that also, I'll be teaching on later on. Can you please plan a session? Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Plan a session for resume building interview. Kishore, actually, in the course, I have dedicated session for that, like one-to-one guide, how to prepare resume, what projects to add in case you are transitioning. All those things are there. Yes, someone was asking question.
Yeah, hi, this is Anuj.
Yes, Anuj.
These test cases that we are using in our pipeline are actually written by the developers in real environment or who?
Pipeline, if you are asking that, yes, we are writing it as a DevOps engineer. We are the DevOps engineer.
But what about the test cases? That is actually
Test
the
cases, no.
sonar.
Test cases will be written by the testing team. Separate team is their testing team mostly. As a DevOps engineer, we are not the ones who's going to write it.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Any other questions, team?
Okay, Aditya, Harish, this side. So you were using a SonarQube image in a different video, I guess. But when I tried to run that image, uh, it's not the Docker container immediately gets exited. So what
One
would
of
be
the
the
main
case?
reasons could be there is like storage.
Okay,
Because yeah, storage makes sure that, as I said, see again, see like million times I have said to everyone, do not use micro, do not use the smaller machines. It's going to
okay,
give issues. Use minimum T2 medium for anything. Minimum T2 medium.
okay, okay, Aditya, will do.
Okay, so deployment is completed and we can check out the logs as well. If I go at the end, you'll be able to see that uh, pods are deployed and we have this service. So we can try to access our application through this first, and let us see what happens. So if the application is accessible from here, then we can go ahead and add a domain to this. Okay, so it is running fine, right? We can sign up. I can put some user, I can register first, and then we can log in. An application is deployed. It's simply like task management. You can put something, add something, those kind of things we can do. Okay, so this is fine, but again, this URL is not very user friendly, right? So what we can do, let me explain. Let me copy this URL first. As of now, I'm directly adding it, but in course, I'll be doing it through this one, Ingress. Okay, so what you have to do, first of all, make sure that you are having at least one domain. You can purchase it from GoDaddy or there are many websites from where you can get it. For me, I'm using GoDaddy because it's like very user-friendly format it is having. Okay, so let's say I have purchased this one, adityatesting.in. Okay, and once you click on that, go to domain and click on this manage DNS. Okay. Let me explain you the most important thing about this. So inside this domain management things, we are having records. Okay, records we are having. Out of which there are many kind of records. Out of which two records which you mainly need to understand: CNAME and A record. Okay, these two records will be used for like mapping. If I want to like map some IP address to some domain, if I want to map some another like domain to domain mapping also we can do. So for those cases we need to use A record or C record. Okay, I'll explain which one to use. One more record which is there, which is known as TXT record, which will be useful when you are configuring certificates. That also I'll be showing on in the course. Okay, now when do we use A record and when do we use CNAME record? So basically, when you want to, let's say when you deploy the application to AKS, in that case, what the AKS is going to do, it's going to generate an external IP address for accessing the application. That means if I put here, instead of giving this kind of URL in AKS, it's going to give us an IP address. Okay. So if you want to map the IP address to your domain, then you need to edit this. You need to edit the A record. In case you are already having a this one, in case you are already having a like domain, this is kind of domain, right? This is from amazon.com. So if you are having this kind of domain, then in that case you need to use CNAME. That means domain to domain mapping. Okay, so as of now we need to do domain to domain mapping. So we can click on add new record. I'm not editing this one because this is one is like configured already for something. Here in type, select CNAME. Here select www. Here we need to put the uh, domain that we have, which is from AWS, like load balancer URL, and copy that. Okay, copy that, click on save. Now this is going to update the DNS record, and it says like within few hours also it may like complete, or within few minutes also, and maximum it may take up to 48 hours. Okay, but let us test it out. So how we can test it out? Basically, I can go on this server. NS lookup is a command which is used for resolving the like IP addresses or URLs. So I can put here as www dot, what is the URL, Aditya testing.in, and you can see now it is pointing to this URL, right? AA0. If you check it here, AA0, right? That means now we are pointing to it. That means let us try to put this in browser. Okay, now you can see it is correctly pointing to where we want to log in, right? The only problem that it's having, it's not secure because we are using as of now HTTP and not HTTPS. Okay, how to do HTTPS, that also I'll be showing on later on in course. Okay, so this is the one of the easiest way using which you can do like mapping of your custom URL. If you are having, you can just map it here. Okay, now queries, anyone queries having? Who provides POM file? Developers. Naveen, no, it's probably I won't be uploading it to YouTube. It will be available on the website itself. Maybe if needed, we'll see if I need to upload on YouTube or not. Now, if you have, guys, if you are having any queries with respect to course, or again, I'm saying this course will be like, make sure I'm teaching everything from scratch to advance, and everything will be done in real time. Basically, how in companies things happen, same way I'm going to teach. If you are interested, enroll. We are like early bird discount as of now we are having, and we'll be closing the enrollment soon. Okay. If you have any queries with respect to that or the deployment that we just did today, you can just ask me now. Message brokers, I'm not sure about it, Kamala. Anyone else having any questions, queries? If not, then fine. Yeah, again, for the course link, you can find on my website, devopshack.com, or my YouTube, LinkedIn, everywhere you'll be able to find all the details. Queries or something? Also, can imagine Jenkins pipeline for Azure DevOps. We can manage, but the thing is ki it's not needed. Why you only think sort of like, why would you manage, why you use separate CI/CD pipeline if you're already on Azure DevOps, right? You only think, what is the point of it? If someone asking it, even if someone asking you this question ki we can do it from Azure DevOps to CI/CD Jenkins, there is no point of doing that. If you want to Jenkins separately, set up separately. Why you need to like use Azure for managing like one CI/CD tool to manage another CI/CD tool? There is no point in that. If you want to Azure is much better for that. Yes, Gaurav, I'll be teaching Azure Cloud as well. In Azure Cloud, whatever things that I work on, I'll be explaining you. Azure DevOps from scratch, Azure AKS, ACR app service. These are the things that I mainly work. Plus this one, uh, we have Data Factory, Databricks, SQL, and other things. So I'll be explaining that as well. Yes, Naveen, there is no issue. If you put enough efforts, you can even get a job. I said na ki there was one guy previous batch who was in call center, but he got DevOps job as well. Great, Anuj. That's really great. Manifest files. Yeah, so Vinitha, actually, we are the ones who is going to write the manifest files. Both, see, the thing is, ki in companies, if you are DevOps engineer, almost everything you are going to do. If you are in MNC, it is possible that infra side things are going to be done by separate team, but most of the things you'll be doing. Any other questions, team? If no, then fine. Thanks for joining, everyone. Okay, it's been amazing session. I hope it was useful for you as well. Okay, so yeah, check it out, and if you have doubts, queries, or anything, you can just ping me in the Telegram group. I'll be happy to answer. And just remember, from 30th, we are starting the batch. Okay, so yeah, that will be all for today. And thank you everyone for joining. Have a nice day.